top hats and mutton shoes, erotic intense midnight cruise, Berlin Gay Society in 1903. Sigmund Freud's Vienna's hype identifies the homotype, the intermediate sex, and heterodoxy. The gay wave moves across the sea. Hello, them is liberty. Betty Boop is hot and hooches out in the cold. Greenwich Village, Bloomsbury, gays in high society. Harlem Night, Chicago fights, Leopold and Loeb. Pride, gotta have pride. Been around too long to keep it inside. Pride gets it back and watch from the side. Pride is power and power is pride. It's time to celebrate all the colors of the rainbow. Get out into the streets, follow the tide.
I'm Brian McNaught, and this is Stonewall Portraits, Profiles in Pride, a short oral history of some of the men and women, gay and straight, bisexual, transgender, who, because of the hard work they did and the vision they had, have made our lives as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people easier, more equitable, and safer. Tonight, in this short segment, our very special guest is my friend Anne Maguire, the matriarch of the gay liberation movement in Massachusetts. Anne.
Hi, Brian.
In 1943, Anne was born in Worcester, Massachusetts, to an Irish Catholic blue-collar family. She took an early interest in family with her dad, Joe, her mom, Gertrude, and her big brother, Joe, all of whom she loved dearly. In healthcare, an early interest in politics, gay issues, and women's issues. In 1973, Anne was the co-host of Gayway, one of the only gay-oriented radio call-in shows in the country. A year later, she was manager of Elaine Noble's successful campaign to become the first openly gay state legislator in American history. She managed the Bar Somewhere, the only safe place for lesbians to congregate in Boston in the 1970s and early 80s. She then became the mayor of Boston's liaison to the gay and lesbian community. Mayor Ray Flynn was a founding member of the National and Massachusetts Breast Cancer Coalitions, led Boston to become the best example on how to address the needs of the homeless, managed the campaign to elect Mayor of Boston Tom Menino, and currently is a prime mover behind the campaigns of politicians on Cape Cod, where she is and was on a first-name basis with U.S. senators and congresspeople such as Ted Kennedy, who wrote Anne a very special note of thank you, which I'm delighted to have seen, Representative Gary Studs, and Representative Barney Frank. Anne Maguire is an icon. Well, you're an icon in not only the gay and lesbian movement in Massachusetts as our matriarch, but in the entire nation's gay and lesbian movement, and people revere you and your contributions, and I'm very grateful that my friend Anne has taken some time to talk about her journey. So if you would, can we just talk at the beginning, when did you first start to, what was the world like when you first started to be aware that you had feelings for women?
It was a very different world than it is today. The very first time I went into a gay bar, I didn't realize it was going to be a gay bar. I had met a couple of women at a bowling tournament. I was bowling then, and saw them on the main street of Worcester a couple weeks later, and they said, come on, let's go get a drink. And I was underage, and I thought, oh, okay. So we went into this bar, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I realized this was a gay bar. I had never been in one before. And I made it a point to get to know everybody. So
in the bar?
Yeah, so I could come back again.
Yeah.
But those were the days in many cases when the cops would just drive up to a bar and load in, 20 guys and take them to the station. And for many people, it was a fearful time.
And this was Worcester?
And also Boston, when I moved to Boston.
Right.
It happened at many places. And in those days, it was very difficult for many people to be out. They used to be in the gay bars, you would be dancing with a woman, they would flash the lights, you would then try to find some guy because the cops were coming into the premise, so we were all then dancing, with mixed couples and stuff.
What time was this? What year was this about?
This was during the late 60s and
Early
early
70s.
Yeah.
And when you first went to the bar with these women
Yeah.
bowlers,
Yeah.
did you have any inkling about them, just any wonder?
Well, I made it a point of sort of, I was looking for signs, but, back then there wasn't a lot of signs
Right.
that were out there,
Right.
or programs or movies or all kinds of
Right.
things. And I knew I was attracted to women. And, my mother had asked me about a friendship I had, and no. And I remember driving my dad to work one day, who worked on Main Street where this bar was located, and he said to me, do you ever go in there? And I was underage at this time, and I said, oh, no. And I didn't hear his answer until later, and he said, it's okay. And
wow.
it was years later
Wow.
that, I recognized his answer.
And you were underage at the time?
Yeah, but my parents were loving, very loving, and for me, I think that was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. My parents and my brother just
Created a safe environment for you.
Loved me for who I was.
And also gave you a standard of family.
Yes.
Yeah, I read in a 1976 interview, full spread in Gay Community News, that one of your goals in life was to live by the ocean with women. So, so the concept of family and community started real early in Worcester with your mom and dad. When did you leave Worcester and come? You were real athletic at the time. You were in.
I was primarily interested in bowling at that time, and was doing pretty well at it.
In bowling, and even thought about making bowling
Career.
your career. Yeah. And what changed your mind about that?
I had been going to school to college at night. I was working at bowling in the daytime,
Right.
teaching and whatever. And I got accepted to Bridgewater State College, and I thought, and off to Boston.
Off to Boston.
yeah.
And what did you major in?
In physical education, health education,
See,
and
so then you got
science.
interested in health.
Yes.
Which became another part of where you were going to take yourself and the community.
Right.
Because later, and we're jumping a little bit ahead, you really were the prime mover behind the breast cancer coalitions in Massachusetts.
Well,
You were
But I think
a founding member.
Yeah, but I think the reason I was a founding member was that breast cancer had personally affected me, and I think one of the things about being an advocate is that you really have a reason to be out there and advocating. That's why, because I was a lesbian, the gay and lesbian community, I think if I hadn't been diagnosed with breast cancer, I'm not sure I would have had the activism that I did have. I certainly probably would have been interested in doing stuff, but I think when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I thought, wow, we must have come a long way. And then I started reading the statistics of what was happening, and, women were dying every day. Things hadn't changed. We didn't know the cause or causes, or what made it happen in you and not the next person and whatever. And I thought, along with some others, that
You have a big
we
heart.
might be able to change this.
But you have a big heart. Everything that I've read about you doing has been about helping people. If it wasn't breast cancer or politics, and we want to get back to that, it was the shelter, it was soup kitchens, it was homeless people. I mean, people, you've got inside this body that can sometimes, with that look, and I think every lesbian in Massachusetts has gotten it at one point, especially if they acted up at somewhere. There is this enormous heart that cares deeply about people.
Well, I think I have been blessed in my life, and I've met too many people over the course of my life that didn't have the benefit of love from parents, didn't have the benefit of love from their religion, didn't have the benefit from lots of things,
Right.
Didn't even have basic things to get by every day. And for me, I really believe in giving back in a way. And I really believe in activism. There's that little quote that never doubt that a small group of committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that can. And I truly believe that. I've seen it happen with gay rights. I mean, Drag queens fought in Greenwich Village in 1969, and for 3 days they held the police at bay, and they made the difference. They started the whole gay rights movement because enough is enough, and let's do something about it.
And lesbian women, and we're at there at the same
Lesbian
time,
women,
gay
yeah,
men.
yeah.
Going back to your activism, if I can, you and Elaine Noble were really good friends in the 1973-74, and she asked you to be her campaign manager. Now, here it is, you're taking on the campaign of a woman who does not deny, as every other person who has been gay who running for office in the past had done, that she was lesbian.
Correct.
And you won.
Correct.
And the story went all over the United States and probably the world that this woman in 1974, as an openly gay person, what was it like running that campaign, and what kind of positive support did you get from people, and what kind of negative reactions were there?
I think a lot of the positive support came certainly from the lesbian and gay community. And secondly, because we didn't make that the issue. And I think in politics, what you have to do is to find the issues that people care about, and that's where you have to be. And so we made the issue what they wanted to see their state rep be doing up at the State House, what kinds of things did they want to see the person involved in. And we also went door to door and talked to people. And, here's Elaine, she can be a state rep. She's more than a lesbian. Let's talk and find out.
Look at this friendly face.
Yeah, look at this friendly face. And I think that by meeting people, and I think every day when we do this by meeting people, people know who we are, know where we're coming from, know what we're all about. I think coming out of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lesbians and gay men has done an enormous good. There are some people who are not up to coming out yet, and that's fine because it's a very personal decision. But I think by sitting and by talking to people, and they can see who you are, a lot of this other stuff just drops.
What was the negative? How bad was it?
Well,
How bad did
I
it
think
get?
we see negatives in a lot of campaigns.
No, but in Elaine's, being the first.
There were some people that really acted out around it, making calls, making threats, doing different kinds of things.
People make threats against you?
Yes.
And physical, violent death threats?
Well, saying that they were going to air condition my car and do different things.
With bullets?
Well, I don't know how they would.
But how did you tell the story about how you handled that? Didn't you? Go on, tell. Does somebody decided he went too far with you?
Yes.
To
make a long story short, every time they would come around the house, I was supposed to call the police would come and make note of it. And then one day I got home and they were there, and I just said enough is enough, parked the car and walked down the street, opened the car, and...
So you opened their car door and
I
just
did.
Right there.
Yes.
Where did you get your
And
political...
they never come back.
They never came back.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think cowards usually run if confronted.
Yeah.
Where did you get your political savvy? Because after running Elaine's campaign, Tom Menino, the mayor of Boston, before he was mayor, he was head of the city council, I think, asked you to run his campaign, which was the whole state of Massachusetts.
City of Boston.
Boston City.
Yeah.
But since then, everybody comes to you, either phone calls or directly asks you to take over their campaign. State representatives now who can run as openly gay people but still want to know, how do I get elected? Where did that come from? How did you get so smart? Because you really are a playmaker. I know you like the behind-the-scenes thing.
I do.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's you figure out how you can win. And you come up with a plan, and that's what you do. I sort of have always enjoyed games and different kinds of things, and I think certainly not that it's a game, but it's a way of figuring out how you can win.
How do you strategize
from sports,
effectively?
you try to figure out how you can win in sports, you try to figure out in campaigns what is it you need to do to get one more vote than the other person.
Okay. Before Elaine, you were co-host of Gayway, one of the only gay radio programs in the country that had call-in. What was it like that? This is 1973. This is only 4 years.
One of the most special things I ever did in my life was to do Gayway.
Okay.
In those days, many of our listeners, and boy, did we have a loyal group. We used to, whenever they did a little radiothon, which they do all the time on public radio stations and so
Right.
forth, we always got tremendously funded by our listeners. But you could go and listen in your car. You could be in the closet, you could be, no one had to know you were gay, you could go and listen in the car and have a contact with the community. They used to have little transistor radios with an earphone,
Yeah.
and you put in the earphone and you could just listen, no one knew you were listening. And for the first time, people heard people on the radio talking about whether it was relationships, health concerns, religion, all kinds of things. And we would go off the air, and we would have a few callers during the time, but we would go off the air and the lights would just be lit up for calls coming in, for people to just ask a question, to just thank us for being
Off the air while
Off
it was
the air,
safe, so
yeah.
no one could recognize their voice.
And I've met thousands of people over the years who have said, thanks for Gay Wave.
Thanks for being there
Yeah.
and being a voice
Yeah.
and a face when
Yeah.
I was too afraid to be
Right.
that. Yeah, that's
Or
really
didn't know. I mean, I had a young guy who said to me, I think I'm gay, but I'm not attracted to, effeminate men. And I said, okay. And I told him to meet me one night. I took him to Sporters.
Sporters is a bar in
Yeah,
Boston.
Yeah, and we walked in, and he wanted to know, these were all the straight men, where would the gay men be? And I said, no, these are all gay men. And
He was shocked
He
that
was
gay men
absolutely
didn't
shocked.
satisfy the stereotype, but he never would have entered the bar if you hadn't
no,
taken
I
him.
took him in.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you've really been guiding people along.
Well, people have given me a lot in my life.
Yeah, but you have given more than that back to people. So, let's go to Somewhere. I know you were manager of a bar in Provincetown before Somewhere.
Called Sisters for
Called
2 summers.
For 2
downstairs
summers.
in the townhouse I did it.
And
yeah.
downstairs in the
In the
townhouse.
townhouse, right.
Okay. But then
75, 76.
you and Bob White
Yes.
took over Somewhere, which was a bar in Boston that catered to women and men. You've always had men in your life.
Sure.
You're a strong feminist,
Yes.
very dedicated to women's issues.
Yes.
That's really at the top for you, women's issues. But you don't have much use for women who don't have men in their life. You're not really, I mean,
Well,
You've always
that's
had
their
men in your
choice.
life.
I mean,
Yeah.
if someone feels comfortable, just having women in their life, that's them.
Right.
And that's what they're about, and that's okay. It's like there are gay men, and maybe they just haven't, figured out or been allowed to have good relationships with women, and that's what we need to do. So if someone, that's what they choose, then that's what they choose, and it's okay. I don't have to be a separatist, but if it makes them okay to go through life being that, then that's them.
but Somewhere was a place that women and men could go,
Sure.
but it became really a woman's bar.
Sure.
And so tell me about, because I also know that people throughout your life have come up to you and said Somewhere was the only place that I could go. You created that safe haven. What was it like at the time for women coming in? It's not like today, right? Or, people were less able to be proud about themselves. What was Somewhere like?
I thought it was wonderful. I would go to work every day as a lesbian and see all these other lesbians out every day, so for me it was great. It was a good, wonderful, safe place for people. For many women, that's where they had their celebrations. Where else could you go to celebrate anniversaries or birthdays or graduations or your commitment to each other, all kinds of things like that. So it became that. It became, we had a group of deaf women that started coming to the bar who were gay. And they would go up to the bartender and ask for a piece of paper to write down. And I thought, if something ever happened to them, they're not going to be able to ask for a piece of paper to write down. It's incumbent upon us to learn how to communicate with them. So I got someone who was a lesbian who taught sign language, and I said to other women in the bar, would you be interested in learning a little bit of sign language? And of course they thought, oh, these women are pretty cute. Of course I will, And we probably had about 80 or 90 women that signed up to learn even just finger spelling and, be able to tell their names and be able to communicate. And it opened up a whole other world for these women.
Can you
who
do
came
that?
in.
Can-
I used to be
Yeah,
able to.
you have to practice, don't
Yeah,
you?
you have to do the alphabet and practice.
Yeah. So but you started teaching people to speak.
I didn't teach
Well,
them. I
no,
got
but you
somebody else
brought
to teach
somebody
them.
in to
Yeah.
do it. You made it happen.
Yeah.
Either at the same time you were taking you were in charge of somewhere. You also was co-founder of the Massachusetts Gay Political Massachusetts Gay Political.
I was co-chair.
Co-chair of that.
Yeah.
But you were co-founder of the Gay and Lesbian Political Alliance,
Right. Yeah.
which became a major force in Boston politics.
Sure. Eric Rofus.
Eric, well, you had a whole, they call it the gay mafia of Boston. You know, you had Eric Rofus and Tim McFeely and Richard Burns and Urvashi Vaught. And I mean, it was quite, and yourself, and everybody who wanted to be elected to any office in Massachusetts requested permission to come and speak at a meeting of BLIGPA members.
Sure.
I mean, that was big time. That was not happening in Ohio at the time, I don't think.
It wasn't, and I think, you know, think about who we've had as elected officials in Massachusetts for the most part. I mean, in '72, go way back to Barney Frank when he was first elected, saying that he would introduce a gay rights bill in Massachusetts. Wow. That's what, when I first met
1972.
Barney. Yeah, you know.
This is before he was out.
Yes, yeah. So I've known Barney all these years, and I think the world of him. He said, you know, we're going to introduce a gay rights bill, and I thought, wow, this is just simply a matter of justice. This will pass. You know, we'll be the first in the country that will pass a gay rights bill. Well, Wisconsin beat us in '82,
yes,
and they had the religious community behind them out there. We didn't get ours passed until '89.
Well, Wisconsin has always been a libertarian state.
Yeah, but we wanted to
be the first one. But you, again, a prime mover of alerting people to the power of politics and how to strategize to achieve your goals. Right? So then you went from, you moved down to the Cape when?
In 95.
In 1995. So you succeeded in your dream of living by the ocean. And when did you meet the love of your life? What year?
25 years ago, 1985.
1985.
Yeah.
So you and Harriet Gordon, a formerly married woman with two very little children. How old were Allison and
14
Jennifer?
and 16, 13 and 15.
Okay, so you basically became a mother during their teenage years, right?
Yeah.
What was it like raising teenage daughters?
The commitment I made to them was that they had a mother and they had a father. They didn't need another parent. That my commitment to them was to be their friend. The second thing was, while they were in high school, they wanted to have friends over. I would go back to Boston until they felt comfortable. And we worked with them over time, and then Allison said, well, maybe I'll tell a friend. And we said, now pick a good friend. And she did, and the world didn't fall apart.
1985, 86, right?
Yeah, it was
a little later?
Yeah, a couple of years later. She was like 15 or 16 at a time, maybe 3 years
But
later.
having gay parents, lesbian parents, was not all that common in 1987, 88.
Correct.
Now it's becoming more of a, you know, it's common day, but that was new.
Yes. And she finally, by the time she told the fifth person in the world didn't fall apart, she then said, well, if they don't like it, I don't want to be a friend with them.
Right.
And
they're very proud of their mothers.
Very proud of their mothers. Each have 2 kids, so we have 4 grandkids, who I never thought I'd have kids in my life, and I am so blessed with
And
them.
they adore you.
Well, I adore them.
But they adore you. And the daughters, Allison and Jennifer's attitudes towards homosexuality shifted so strongly. I mean, Jennifer ended up marrying somebody with a gay brother.
Well, their bonding moment was they were both out in Montana at a gym, and they started talking to each other, and Steve said, you know, blah, blah, mother and father, and by the way, I have a brother, and by the way, he's gay. She goes, that's nothing. My mother's a lesbian.
Yeah.
They continued talking, went out to dinner that night, and that was their bonding moment at that time.
We talked about the gay mafia, and you know, which has been referred to. In Boston, Massachusetts was one of the most politically sophisticated places in the country with gay people. San Francisco, New York, and Boston. And some people would say, well, what about Chicago? But this is really where it happened. of all the members of that group, you're the only one who stayed in Massachusetts.
Pretty much so.
Well, they've all come back
Yeah.
and bought homes, but
Sure.
you have been here your entire life.
I love Boston, and I love Provincetown.
Yes.
And,
And in Provincetown, Massachusetts, which is at the very tip of the Cape, you have become a prime mover, and I mean, you don't stop. You move here, there's no retirement for Ann Maguire. You're still running people's campaigns. You're head of the finance, or you're vice chair of the finance committee. You're helping the town get organized. Will you ever run out of steam?
I truly believe in giving back, and I just believe in that. I've been very blessed.
Okay. So all right. So let's talk a little bit
And
more.
I don't want to sit home and the
Play
newspaper
cards.
after the newspaper,
Right.
I mean, what do you do then?
Right.
I mean, for me, it's about living every day, and you go out and you do what you can do.
A little bit more about your family, if I
Sure.
can, because that's your life.
Sure.
I mean, and it's an extraordinary family. And I've been blessed to be brought in and participate with that. You've watched Ben, your first grandchild, grow into an extraordinary young man, and he is an apple of your eye, and
Yes, he is.
and he adores you.
Well, the feeling is mutual.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
and he, as a grandchild, is very sophisticated on gay issues. So here we are, Ann Maguire, who started out in Worcester, Massachusetts, with a dad who, made it a little safe in the beginning by saying, it's okay if you go in there. And now here you are with a family of your own and their grandchildren being up from. So big difference in the 40 years that we have been
Sure.
out there.
Yep.
What do you think about that? Did you ever think you'd live to see the day when?
I guess I've always felt from the beginning, and I think I said this in this interview, when we were looking at working on the gay rights bill for Massachusetts, that it was a simple matter of justice, and we hoped that it would just pass. It should, because it's a simple matter of justice. And I talked a little bit about people coming out and how it has really changed things by people being able to meet lesbians and gay men and, work next to them, talk, doing whatever. I see when Harriet and I got married in '04.
That your daughter officiated on the deck in front of your
Jennifer got
home.
permission, Allison stood next to her, and they invited all of their friends because we had been, supportive of them. They all wanted to come. We have a picture of all these young couples holding babies at our wedding that
Yeah.
are all their friends.
Yeah.
And I do think that we've come a long, long way. Do we still have a long way to go? Yeah. Lesbians and gay men, young kids are bullied every day in school. They get their fingers closed in doors, they get, shunned when they want to do stuff, whatever. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen. We have lesbians and gay men every day who, for whatever reason, just can't accept the fact they live in different parts of this country or different parts of this world and are not accepted, not loved, not anything. We still have a lot of work to do in that area. Around health issues, especially around breast cancer, women die every year from breast cancer. We know about chemotherapy and surgery and radiation, but we don't know the cure yet for everybody. We still need to work on that. We still have a lot of work
You're
to do.
quite something.
There-
You are quite something. And again, you're an icon in the movement. I know but
I think of icons as on my computer.
no, that's different. No, well, it's the same thing. Those icons on the computer are a symbol that says if you go to this, you're going to get the best that there is on this subject. If you go to Ann Maguire, as people constantly do come to your home in Provincetown, drop by saying, I don't know if you remember me, but you touched my life in a very deep way. So Thank you, Anne Maguire, for being.
Well, thank you for being part of my life. Brian.
Thank you for being such an important part of my life, Anne. And for the rest of you out there, the beat goes on. We're still struggling for pride. We thank you all for putting the proud face that you do on our movement. And thank you again for joining this Stonewall profile of our friend and hero, Anne Maguire.
Gotta have pride. Been around too long to keep it inside. Pride, can't sit back and watch from the side.